Senator Larkin, thank you. Thank you, and I know many times we say thank you, but I want to thank you for something a little different. It has been a pleasure to serve in this conference and to watch over the past 4 years what it means to live a life well lived and to be honored by your peers and your community accordingly in a way that I can't imagine most people could ever self-actualize. We all want to do the best we can to live the best life we can and give back to our community, to have a loving family and to be productive, and you are a man who personifies a life well lived, and you are an example to all of us, and I thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. We put together a trip down to the World War II memorial. I was a young Air Force officer when they were building that memorial in Washington, D.C., and I've got to say that outside of graduating from the United States Air Force Academy, the best day of my life was taking approximately 50 World War II veterans, including my grandfather, Hermie Schreiber, down to that World War II memorial. We went down there and joined efforts with Congressman Maloney and Congressman Gibson. One of my friends was at that point the head of the United States Air Force Honor Guard. Hopefully Senator Larkin won't hold that against him or I. And we were down on that memorial. This is a few weeks actually before the federal government found it within their interest to shut the place down. They are extremely lucky that it was not shut down on that day, because I know that probably Congressman Maloney, Congressman Gibson, and Senator Ball would have been arrested, because I would have called the Teamsters and I would have went through the gates. And everybody who knows me, including my mother and my staff, know that is exactly true. We would have visited that memorial regardless. But that day, it was a beautiful blue sky. We had these men and women there. And you know what? The United States Air Force Honor Guard did a presidential level ceremony for these heroes. And the tourists came around. We had about 1,000 people watching on that day, and there was not a dry eye. If you think about World War II, and a couple times I've heard people say, we will never forget. I don't know. 9/11, how many people have already forgotten that? World War II, we lose these heroes every day. We are in the midst right now of a downsize of our military in this country that is unprecedented. You know, many of these men were drafted. Today, we live in this country, enjoy enormous freedom on their backs, and on the backs of Special Forces troops and combat troops that serve today who volunteer and represent less than 1% of the population. We've had recent conflicts where those Special Forces troops have gone in to battle, and this country did not back them. If you want men and women to stand up and say, I am willing to fight and die for this country, you sure as hell better be there when their butt's on the line. We were a very different country back then. In World War II. 60 million people, including civilians, perished. 2.5% of the world's population. 2.5%. Every single able-bodied young man stood up, and many women, to fight, and many died for this country. And those that were here, left in this country, stood up, they sacrificed, and we had the best manufacturing might, and we were able to go to war. Could we today? And would we? How many of you would send your children? So as we stand here today and we honor these heroes, and I know I speak to the choir with most of you, we better realize that this country is very different than it was when these men, and many of the friends that never came back, stood up. And we better learn from that lesson, because history has a funny way of repeating itself. June 11th, the beachheads were secured. 326,000 troops had crossed. Over 100,000 tons of equipment. Paris was liberated. Talk about forgetting history. Paris was liberated August 25th. And Germany surrendered on May 8th, 1945. I know we all have images in our head when we think of World War II. I think of troops killing Jews, and I think of an image in my head that is iconic of a Jewish mother hovered over her children as soldiers aim on her and kill her. You talk about evil? That's evil. And you're right, evil still exists all around this world. And that American flag represents the last remaining hope of defending moms and children and innocent people all around this world. You can choose to deny it, but we must accomplish and continue to accomplish peace through strength. And if you don't stand for anything, people will die. This country needs to continue to stand for what's right. Okay, so I want to go through some names here. We have Peter Barney Bambase, who's United States Air Force, private first class. John Graziano, Navy. Please stand up when you hear your name. Third class petty officer. Peter Senatore, Army, lieutenant. Jack Alonzo, Navy, who's here with his wife, and they've been married 56 years. And that's his beautiful wife, Virginia Alonzo. As a guy at 36 that's not married, I'm going to talk to you guys later. I want to know what the secret is, okay? Hermie Schreiber, my grandfather, it's his 88th birthday today. He doesn't look a day over 35. And actually my mother, who's here as well, Judy Ball, who is responsible for me, so the Democrats, you can yell at her, okay? And we have Ray Dupree from Senator Marchionne's district, who's Army and Army Air Corps private first class. I'll leave you with this. And you know, at the United States Air Force Academy, we had to memorize these quotes, which I just hated, but I realize now the importance. And this quote is one that I'm not good at memorization, but this is one that I actually did remember, but I can't say it, verbatim, so I'm going to read it. But I did remember it when I was a cadet. A professional soldier understands, and it's by General Norman Schwarzkopf, who's also a Valley Forge alumni. Storm Norman. A professional soldier understands that war means killing people. War means maiming people. War means families left without fathers and mothers. All you have to do is hold your first dying soldier in your arms and have that terribly futile feeling that his life is flowing out and you can't do anything about it. Then you understand the horror of war. Any soldier worth his salt should be anti-war, and still there are things worth fighting for. There are still things worth fighting for in this chamber, in this country. I hope to God that this nation remains strong, that our leadership wakes up, because there are people around this world that will rely upon the courage of men like that. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless everyone.